Looking good, Dave.
Feeling good, Hollis.
Hello, and welcome to the reboot of Pop Culture Graveyard. With me is Dave Horowitz, my good close friend of, is it like 30 years now? 25, yeah. Easy?
I'll go 30.
That is nuts. Any of you who have never seen or heard the show before, I started Pop Culture Graveyard maybe 3 years ago during the pandemic. Had a couple of years of the show just talking about the music I love. Took a year off to refresh my mind. And Dave and I are coming back with a reboot of the show in which we talk about all your favorite pop culture artifacts. We are very pleased and proud to bring you The Warriors, one of our favorite movies separately and collectively. We have talked about this movie before, just in passing. We're going to go a little deep today. Before we jump into The Warriors, what have you watched lately, Dave?
You told me you might ask me this, and I intentionally did not make note. I was like, I'm gonna tell them what I watched last night.
Okay.
But 9 out of 10 times, that's Barney Miller.
We don't need to say our age on this show.
Yeah.
From the conversation, you can get exactly how
people
old
are going to get it down to the month. People are going to get our age down to the month.
All right, let's jump in. Let's just jump right into The Warriors. If anyone hasn't seen the film, it is from 1979, directed by the great Walter Hill. It was written by David Shaber, who wrote Nighthawks with Sly Stallone, another great gritty New York movie from that time, and Walter Hill, the director. And it's based on the novel by Saul Urich. Have you ever read the novel?
I have not.
I do not recommend it.
Okay. That novel is based on a Greek myth of
the Anabasis by Xenophon, which
he didn't look that up in his prep, folks.
I did not.
He knew.
Sadly, I think you're going to get a sense of us, and I'm the geek. But anyway, the thing about the novel is, I think it's from like 1965 or something. It was written over a number of years leading up to its publication, so it's got a real 50s sensibility. Like in the novel, the Warriors are wearing hats, and the emblem of their gang is a stick pin Mercedes-Benz emblem that they stole off cars and they stick it there. And so, like in the novel, Mercy asks the gang members,
good, actually.
Yeah, not bad. But Mercy asks the members, like, "Hey, come on, give me a pin, give me a thing." She wants to wear
much more reasonable than a vest.
Yeah, like I'm like, you really think they're going to give you their top?
I know a guy's going to go shirtless for the rest of the movie. Maybe Remar.
He wouldn't mind. He's got the dance skin too. The kind of he could just join the other gang we see walking down the platform with the dance skin.
Now you got me thinking it's a full leotard.
I hope it is.
Yeah, me too.
Initially, there was a scene in the daylight where Cleon, the leader of the Warriors, and his girlfriend, she doesn't want them to go. She's talking to him. And then immediately after that, he's giving all the Warriors their marching orders and telling them their roles. It's like roll call. And it happens in broad daylight. The editor suggested to Walter Hill that they cut it because they want to open at night and save the daylight for the very ending when they come out of the night of horrors. If you see the TV version, you can still see the daylight. They use that in all TV versions. I love the daylight opening. I feel it bookends the movie perfectly. Everything's fine. We're in Coney Island where things are good. Night brings the terror. And then the morning in Coney Island where they come out, the ending, whether it's good or bad. I love that bookend. But do you like opening on the Wonder Wheel?
I do like, I've like so many things that I like, though. I'll never know if I like it because it's better or if I like it because it's what I saw over and over again. If I taste chocolate 1,000 times and then somebody goes, "Oh, no, wait, this was going to be chocolate," I'm like, yeah, I have no idea if that's better than what I've been eating.
Yeah.
You were the first person who mentioned to me, it hadn't even occurred to me that the movie starts in the dark and ends in the light. You were the first person to mention that to me.
Oh, wow.
And I immediately went, "Oh, that's great. I love that."
It works.
Yeah. Thinking about it now, I have to say, I think I like starting in daylight better. But daylight is also safety. They haven't taken a risk yet when the movie opens. And Cleon is, and his girlfriend is asking him not to go because she knows it's not safe, or she feels that she has a feeling it's not safe.
Right.
So it's safe, out to danger, and then back to safety. So
Mm-hmm.
the bookends works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also probably it's the way both you and I were first introduced to it on television, right? Or did you rent it first?
What year did it come out?
79.
Yeah, we saw it in the theater. We started hearing later that it was causing trouble. I don't know where a 13-year-old hears that, but someone knew that, like, oh yeah, there were fights outside the theaters. Like all the young people are coming out pumped up, which was definitely us. I saw that movie with probably 5 or 6 guys, and we went in, friends, seeing a movie, and we definitely walked out a gang.
Wow.
We were like walking down this, because now we had to go. We didn't have a movie theater in our town.
You had to bop your way back to your hometown?
We didn't have a movie theater in Armont. We had to bop our way back to our hometown.
Wow.
And so we had to go to the Metro North train and wait for it on the platform. And God help if there was a group of kids who had come walking by minding their own business. We definitely would have reacted to them.
You were saying what it did to just regular kids and how it pumped them up and made them kind of feel destructive, even if they didn't act on it. But actual gangs were going to see this movie as well. And as you know, there's only so many movie theaters, so somebody's got to be in somebody else's territory. A lot of these gangs are at the movie at the same time. There was so much violence that at first the movie company pulled the advertising because they were like, okay, let's not spread the word. And then they just pulled the movie after a certain point.
Yeah, I didn't realize it got that bad. That's too bad.
Yeah.
There was no way around that. That movie was going to do that. There was no good way to avoid it.
That's how you know the movie worked, too, if you're the director, if you're the producing team, because you watch it today, and I think it would still have that effect on 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids.
Absolutely.
So there are 2 major holes in the script, as far as I'm concerned, and I've always fought with this while I'm watching it. One is that there's a very simple way home for the Warriors, and it's never explored. It's never even commented upon. And that is hot wiring a car.
Going to say steal a car.
Yeah, which I think every gang member from inception should learn how to do at some point, or at least has one guy who can do it. Fox probably would be the guy who could figure it out in the Warriors. But how do you not, even if you don't hotwire a car, why don't you invent carjacking at some point and go home? And the hole in the script is made even more glaringly apparent by 2 of the biggest gangs in it, the Rogues and the Turnbull ACs. The Rogues have this hearse they drive around in, and the Turnbulls have that great big school bus.
I think that's a thread you should not pull on. That is a major flaw. It's why didn't the robots use nuclear power plants in the Matrix?
I don't even get that reference. That's why you are who you are and I am who I am.
Right. This is going to work out great.
Yeah.
Why isn't that addressed? Because it's unaddressable. Add a stolen car to that movie and you have no movie.
Yeah, but I guess it's the writer in me. I just want it addressed. Either I want a character to do it and then they get stopped by the cops because they look too young to drive, or I want them to run off the road or something. But if the actors were the proper age for the characters as drawn in the novel, it would make total sense. None of them would have a license. Even if they did try to drive, they would look far too young to drive. As is, the only cast member who looks somewhat as young as he should be is Marcelino Sanchez, Rembrandt. But everyone else was mid to late 20s, at which point you're like, dude, you're a grown-ass man waiting for a train.
Drive home. Get a cab.
A cab. There's no cabs.
In defense, how many cars drive by? I mean, we've all seen movies that take place at night in New York City.
Yeah.
And all it is taillights and headlights.
Right.
And this movie there are no taillights and headlights.
Yeah. The isolation works.
If you're a fan of the Warriors, you might be like, oh, it's not taking place in its own time. It's taking place in a futuristic time where the city is somewhat different, and the fact that there are 200 warriors
plus affiliates. I love that because you just led me to my number 2 hole in the script. The Warriors are just 9 guys, emissaries.
I'm already on this,
every other gang in the city, on their way to that conclave to hear what Cyrus has to say. Once the truce is off, And the Warriors are bopping past every other gang's central location. Why aren't they chased by 150 baseball furies? We see enough bats for all the other members of that gang.
Yeah.
Why aren't there 200 Lizzies waiting for them? I understand it because you can't film it that way, and the Warriors would have died in the park with the baseball players
right.
who surround them and then just patiently wait their turn to fight somebody rather
That's kung
than
fu movie style.
Yeah. I know from gangs, and they do not wait their turn.
It's the whole point of a gang
member.
It's the whole point of a gang is you never have to fight alone.
It's so true. And the other end of that is when they make it home to Coney. Why isn't there like, hey, Cedric, call the boys. 9 rogues are after us. And
have you not been listening to the DJ that the rest of the city is listening to?
Yeah.
Because she's been calling a play-by-play.
Yeah. And we know Cleon's girl is worried. She would have all of them waiting at the train stop.
She's not there.
No. She's moved on, but I told him not to go.
I think that this is all moot because it may illuminate for me why Walter Hill wanted the comic book beginning. Because in a way, then when you ask those questions, it's like, what, you're asking questions about my comic book?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a comic book, you know?
Right. By the way, the comic book director's cut does not work at all.
When I first saw that, I thought that Rockstar Games was responsible.
Right.
I'm never the guy who's like, oh, that's my childhood movie and they ruined it. But I was like, this hurts. Like, this is gross.
In case you're wondering what we're talking about, there's the theatrical cut, which we love. And then there's the director's cut, which is not going to say an abomination. Every director deserves to do what he wants to do. But the effects come up every once in a while. Like, meanwhile,
comic, ...
Right. Ellipses.
The line moving through the shot.
The swipes are there in the regular movie. The swipes work. And they help create the illusion of the comic book that he wants. And those little comic things that come up, they don't come up often enough to normalize them. They're jarring. It's also at odds and fights with the gritty sensibility of the entire film. It takes you out of the film, and you never want to do that.
What was that VH1 show where things would go bloop?
Pop-up video.
Pop-up. It's. I've got an idea for a gritty New York City gang movie with just a touch of pop-up video.
That is great. I would prefer that instead of a director's commentary. Do the Walter Hill pop-up video and play the thing and have him boom, boom, boom.
That would actually be a good time.
You know, what's funny, though, is in the actual novel, one of the characters is reading a comic book of the Anabasis, I believe. So it's like, I know what Walter Hill was doing and what attracted him to it. And this is something that whether you're George Lucas or Walter Hill or whoever, sometimes directors don't know when they nailed it. They don't know when they got it right. If I'm Walter Hill, I just embrace the theatrical version. He fucking. It
makes perfect sense that they lose sight, though. You set up a dolly on the Stillwell Avenue stop at, you know what I mean? Like, and then another dolly, and then another dolly, and then you talk about it, and then you shoot it, and then you look at it, and then you shoot it differently, and you lose objectivity halfway through making a movie. Like, it may be that truly good directors are ones who manage to hold on to the most objectivity. It would be impossible for me. I know that when I work on something, after a while, I'm like, well, now I'll never know if it's any good because I'm just way too invested in it.
Yeah, no, I'm that way.
Tried so many iterations.
Yeah, I'm that way too.
You're never going to have the objectivity of an outsider.
But like Walter Hill is a great fucking director, especially action stuff. Like 48 Hours. Come on. He even has Billy Bear from 48 Hours in The Warriors.
He's one of the cops. Yeah.
He takes the Louisville Slugger to the shins. And like, he's a great action director. And the way he judiciously uses slow-mo, and one of his like ADs, I think, talked about it once, where he doesn't use slow-mo gratuitously. In every action scene, he'll just use it like once or twice, like for 3 seconds at a time.
The backwards flip into the bathroom
stall. That's the best one. Yeah. By the way, that bathroom, the only set in the entire movie.
Oh.
Everything else is location. That bathroom is built. And the bathroom looks like A, a,
Unreal. That
a
is the
subway
fact that
bathroom.
you telling me that, and too many people listening are going, subway bathroom. But
Question
yes,
mark?
but yes, subway
Yeah.
bathroom.
Oh,
It's like people used to go into a subway bathroom.
right.
I can't believe you're telling me it was a set, but
Yeah.
it has occurred to me, like, because they break the mirror and
Hmm.
I believe, do they break the wall tile? No, they just bounce off of those
No, I
tiles.
think there's some tile that
Do they
goes
break
too.
some? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's just amazing how much action happens in a small square in that scene. Another place that he throws in a little bit of slow-mo is when Cochise, Vermin, and Rembrandt are escaping the Lizzie's den.
Oh yeah,
Just
the
there's the
hop
one
over.
breaking through the door, and then there's the coming out, and
Yeah.
over the couch or whatever, and the chair breaking over the toughest looking member of the Lizzies.
Toughest looking, right?
Which
She
is a
tough
nice way
looking.
of saying
Yeah.
she's a badass that I would not want to mess with. She's the only one that looks like she belongs in a biker gang.
She's extremely believable. I wouldn't be surprised if she got offers for other
Yeah.
villainous young women roles.
And
But now that you're mentioning in the slow-mo, the three of them breaking through that door
right?
into that narrow hallway and heading out. And you know what?
Spot on.
It's the end of the bathroom scene where the guy flips backwards into the stall with the
Yeah.
camera basically in the toilet. It's the end of the escaping the Lizzies where they all come crashing through the door. The camera's already waiting. The feeling you're left with after a fight or an escape is the last thing you saw.
Right.
And in each case, the last thing you saw was like, whoa. So
Yeah,
it's
that's a
the
good point.
right feeling heading into the next scene.
Yeah, it's true. They escape the door and then they're on the street. And the Lizzies are literally in the room 12 feet away holding guns that they just fired at them. And they're like, oh, shoot. Like,
Yeah.
well, they made it to the sidewalk. I guess they got away. Like, it never occurs to them to run out and just start shooting at them down the
Yeah,
street.
it's right there with the fight people one at a time thing. It's like, oh, they got out of our hideout.
Yeah.
Them's the rules.
Yeah. And it's such a like reminder of just how great the film is and how much people love the film that you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Yeah.
care at all. They're running in the Baseball Furies scene, and you see that the lighting director put lights in the trees behind them. You know, to his credit, it kind of reads in the distance almost like, oh, they're just street lamps. But they're not. They're no street lamps.
They're too high. Yeah, yeah.
And so you don't even care. And they wet down. The first thing they did was create a rain scene when like Nowhere to Run comes or something. They have it rain on the Warriors so that from that point on, they can wet down the streets to get more light in the reflection off the ground and to make the whole city kind of one and seem otherworldly. It's so cool. That's why it has such a great look to it. And it sells New York, a very certain type of New York. You know, the kind of after dark, dangerous New York that you and I remember so fondly and probably wouldn't go back to if you paid us. It's the New York of after hours.
I would walk around that New York with an Ajax and maybe a Swan.
Yeah.
And I'm Vermin. I'm Salami. I'm like, should we go down this? Is this street for us?
Right.
And are we sure we want to go in there?
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out with guys who are like, yeah, fuck that. I'm not afraid.
Yeah. I'm not soldiering. I'm not soldiering the middle.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey guys, you want a W here?
The majority of people who make it to New York City never see the New York City of the Warriors. You've mentioned that's one of the great things about the Warriors is it's a sightseeing tour of New York City with your friend who never goes anywhere famous or cool.
Right.
It's like, oh, you got to see this great alley. You got to see this great abandoned street.
He's showing you the real New York.
It's a New York that you and I not only are familiar with, but like is ingrained in us. Right, what you're talking about when they come out, when they escape the Lizzies and they duck around the corner, literally dozens of feet away from the armed women.
Mm-hmm.
That place where they are, that wall, that planter, that set of garbage cans, it is flawless. I could not ask for better garbage, for better walls.
I think they had a genius location director.
They had to have. You came up in the city. I came up from outside the city, so I even know what it's like to go to the city and be in an unfamiliar place and have it become familiar as a scary place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm familiar with the scary alleys and familiar with the dicey streets. What I'm saying is, I'm saying to the rest of the population who doesn't have this experience, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's realer than real. It's more human than human.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a Hollywood tradition, and we know why they do it. But the members of not just the Warriors, but most of the gangs in the book are all Black and Hispanic. And when it reaches the screen, it's half white, which is still, for the day, for the time it came out, which is still not an abomination by Hollywood standards. When you think about how Hollywood normally casts all white people and like one token ethnicity, it's not cringing in retrospect like it would be in lesser hands and with lesser performances because everyone's so good in it. But it's something I think about every time I see the film. I wonder what your thoughts are on it, and I wonder how we would make the film today.
Well, I think, first of all, my immediate reaction, and this is probably the first time it's happened, if someone brings up, if this film was made now, what about the ethnicities? What about, with a lot of movies I like, I would start to go, what about that?
Yeah.
With the Warriors, I don't do that. Because with the Warriors, I feel like it stands on very solid ground. In this movie, there is a gang that is obviously the bad guys, the rogues. The bad guys are predominantly white.
Yeah.
They're white run. They're mostly white people. I think in the 9 delegates, I think there's 1 or maybe 2, but I think 1 black guy.
I can't think of one, but you might be right. And Luther, the leader of the rogues, makes a couple of cryptic phone calls to someone who may be, the man or something. And it's like,
I don't care if the gangs take over, just make sure they're not taken over by those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Take out that guy.
Exactly. Which is why the ethnicities at work in that kind of dynamic, works like a Swiss clock.
This is a 3-point why the Warriors is on steady ground in this area. So the first point was the bad guys are white.
Right.
And you agree.
Yeah.
Second point,
today the bad guys are white. I don't care where you fucking point. Bad guys are white. So that's accurate and truthful.
It's accurate. It's truthful. While he's making this movie, every bad guy getting arrested on every cop show is Black and Hispanic.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Walter Hill's like, okay, we need a bunch of bad guys. I'm picking mostly white dudes. So then, okay, part 2, the biggest, most successful, most organized gang in the entire thing is almost entirely Black and Hispanic.
Gramercy
run by a Black Hispanic mix.
Right.
In Cyrus, taken over by Masai. And he is it's a great name, and he is great in it. And those shades. I mean, as an actor, I'd hate to hide behind mirrored shades, but
that's why his mouth detaching is such a great
it's a great thing. So then the third part,
I just want to bring up Gramercy riffs in the novel, the Delancey Thrones. Talk about a name upgrade.
Yeah. Gramercy riffs strikes fear.
Yeah.
Delancey Thrones.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No.
Delancey Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, it's got that plug ugly stupidity to it.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
Okay, point 3.
Point 3 is the Warriors is a Black run gang until Cleon is killed.
Yes.
The leader, there's Warlord, I believe, and War Chief.
Right. Cleon is Warlord.
And Swan is War Chief.
Right.
So I think is on very stable ground. Can you make that movie today? Hell yeah. In fact, if it had never existed and you made the Warriors shot for shot, character for character right now, half of those idiots out there would say, I didn't like that movie. It was way too woke.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the leader of the Warriors was Black. I don't believe that the most,
And I'll tell you something. It's very cool that the Warriors are integrated. And it's cool in a lot of ways. It's cool that their leader is Black. And it's cool that their Black leader goes to pick his second in command and picks the guy who he knows has leadership capabilities. in case anything goes down. He picks Spock. He picks the guy who like even doesn't know he can be a leader. Later, when they come up against the orphans, the other guy, he's going to parlay, and the other guys are like, "Yeah, you ain't exactly the United Nations type." It's like,
right.
But Cleon saw something in him.
Yeah, I thought that was a good, important line too, because it says, in scenes we don't see, Swan flies off the handle. Swan makes bad decisions or chooses violence over.
Yeah, he almost goes toe-to-toe with Ajax. He's like, make your move. And the rest of them chill Ajax out. They don't want to see the two toughest guys in their gang, the two guys that are going to get them home together.
Which they do.
They don't want to see each of these guys break each other's arm or something. And then they're carrying these guys.
They lose to the Baseball Furies without Ajax, and they don't make it home without Swan. So they really are the two most important. Yeah. Ajax serves his purpose, and then
it's true. Let's talk, speaking of bopping their way home, let's talk a little bit about the other gangs. Who are your favorite other gangs? Not including the top hats who were covered in mime makeup that we see for 5 minutes.
It's funny because I find myself, this is a category of questioning where I find myself saying, why do I like the Warriors so much? Because I'm almost like, there's not a lot of gangs in that movie that impress me besides the riffs. I will say the Rogues are good. The Rogues are a well put together gang. That Joey Ramone guy, what's his name? His name's like Carcass or something. The second in command.
You
know who I mean?
Of course I do. I have a story about him.
Oh, I have him in my cast and characters.
His name's like Joel Weiss or something.
Yeah, you get the actor.
Leave it to me to know.
Cropsey.
Are you serious?
That's his name. Cropsey. He's terrific. He's really good. And the rest of that gang, they're all they're cowards in what's his name then? No reason. I like doing shit like that. They're cowards in Luther's shadow. They're terrified of Luther. And they're letting him.
He's tiny. But it's like, I guarantee you it was based on the kind of like paradigm of Manson. Someone who is slight, he will go anywhere. Just in general. I think you and I, knowing me, you and I can agree that I'm kind of a sweetheart. I don't go looking for trouble. Growing up the way I grew up, being on the smaller side, just a basic question. Who do you think has to fight all the time?
Mm-hmm.
The 7 foot 250 guy?
Nope.
Don't mess with little guys.
No.
They know I got to get this guy down and I got to keep him down. Luther is all adrenaline. He's the id released. He is pure evil. He's Iago. He's that kind of character. Who isn't scared of that guy? Who doesn't care if he's going to die as long as he takes you with him? So, he's the leader.
Yeah,
but it's kind of
they
funny.
Do what he says.
Yeah.
Each
rogue has a story.
And wouldn't you watch that fan fiction? I mean, like, I might watch Rogue fan fiction or read Rogue fan fiction before I read War, because Warriors would all be stuff you'd expect, but it'd be very interesting to find out what each of the Rogues got up to.
Oh my God! Oh, speaking of which, can I tell my Warriors story really quickly?
Oh, you have a Warriors story?
It's about Cropsey.
Okay.
I lived. What's his name? Is it Joel Weiss? Is it
Joel Weiss?
So Cropsey. I lived in LA for 1 year. Back in, I want to say 95, could have been 97. I was in this theater company and it was auditions for something, but it had a bunch of actors that came from other places. One of which was Joel Weiss, who is now LA based. And the second I saw him, even though it was like almost 20 years to the day of the Warriors, I could pick him out of a lineup of hundreds. He looked exactly the same.
He was great.
A little overgrown hair with his ears. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, you were in the Warriors. And he was like, oh, yeah, I was. And I sat right next to him and I was like, tell me everything. And he loved telling the story. It was clearly, it was clearly a highlight in his life. And he spoke in this voice. Yeah, I was one of like, thousands of New York actors that came out for the part. And we had a couple that drew us together. It was like all of a sudden I'm a rogue. And they put me next to Luther. They liked how I looked next to him. And we vibed and everything. And he's telling me this story,
So
and
good.
I loved it and loved it and loved it. And then I'm just hanging with him the rest of the day. And he was a diehard Mets fan. And he had a Mets tote bag.
He
He had a
would be.
Mets cap. Yeah.
He probably folded the brim at completely so that he could put it in his back pocket.
Yeah.
That's a real New York style.
Real
right
New
there.
York style. And he was just talking nonstop the rest of the day about the Mets and about like deep Mets core stuff of just,
Right.
when they had Ringhausen, they should have hung on to him. He was such a great arm and they needed him out of the bullpen. And they, like really, I hadn't seen anything like that since the days of Bob Apodaca, like deep state Mets talk. I could not believe I met him.
I think it was his car.
The hearse. Yeah, he drove.
I think he drove it. I always associated it with being Cropsy's car. I mean, it's the gang car.
He drove it. They had like apple crates for him and Luther in the front, and there were no seats in the whole thing. And then all the rogues were just like in the back, like it was like station wagon. Yeah. And can you believe? Was it David Patrick Kelly? What's his name? Who played Luther? Walter Hill told him to like come up with something to scare the Warriors. We want you to scare the Warriors. And Luther went under the pier and found those beer bottles. And he went and he was like, Walter, what about if I went something like this? And he clinked them together. And he was like, yes, that's it. And put him in the car. He was living in this spot in New York where this big bully would always like say his name like that, like David. And it scared the crap out of him. And so he started doing the clinking, and then he went, Warriors, come out to play. Yay. And it worked like a charm. But how crazy is that? It's so iconic. If you've never seen the Warriors, you probably know that reference. And it was all off the cuff with this magnificent actor just like conjuring that out of nothing. And the sound designer even expanded the clinking of the bottles before his voice comes in to just make it work over the scenes.
That's the kind of thing Walter Hill's, they finished shooting that and Walter Hill's like, okay, regardless of what we do here, everyone's going to be talking about this movie because everyone's going to be talking about this scene.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the picture, whenever you see a picture of David Patrick Kelly, that's that picture. I mean, a Warriors related picture, it's that picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe his name in 48 Hours is Luther once again.
I think you're right.
Did I hit you with that car door, Luther?
Yeah.
That's what Eddie Murphy says.
That's right.
Yeah, he probably wears the same sweatshirt. I'm a skeptic when it comes to movie stories.
Right.
Like, oh, I don't know if you know this. And I'm like, I don't know it because it's not true. 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when you finish making a movie, you're like, okay, now let's make up the stories. Oh, the brakes actually went out on that car.
Yeah.
Or, that scream you hear at the end, that's an actual scream. And I'm always like, ugh, like you're just selling the movie.
Yeah, it's true.
This isn't, we were rolling and he found these bottles and he picked them up. Like, this was come up with something. Okay, I will. Here's what made me think of it. And I totally buy it. I totally buy it. But there are stories that are written specifically for Conan, though. Like, this is what you'll say to Conan. I worked with a bartender who was a writer, and one of the things he did for money was he wrote stories. He wrote stories for actors to tell in interviews.
He wrote spontaneity.
Yes. So tell me something interesting about that happened on the set of, and he would write let me tell you.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's
you know what showbiz people call that when you're on panel? Patter.
Mm-hmm. This guy wrote patter. And he was like, there's a non-disclosure portion of it. Obviously, I'm not going to tell people. He was like, you're on Conan and you don't have anything interesting to say because you're not an interesting person.
Right.
Because you're just the second lead and, whatever in Adventures in Babysitting. No, that's actually not.
No, that's
okay.
I love that you can't go any newer with your reference, though. That's great.
But anyway, you got nothing. So this guy writes you, this bartender in New York City writes you something. It makes perfect sense because O'Toole had stories, and O'Toole and Harris, those guys,
the drinking partners,
right? They have stories. There are a lot of actors who want those stories and don't have them. That's where this guy came in.
I'll tell you something else too. which is smart. We see it today all the time with social media. The easiest thing in the world is to keep your mouth shut. Actors love to open their mouths.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes they say something that immediately has to get walked back.
You got here via words on a page.
That's what I was just going to say, too.
Stick with it.
The scariest thing to an agent is their clients without a script in front of them. That's one of the things about like the Warriors that's so funny is that like all of these actors, they exist primarily in the universe of the Warriors. You know, Michael Beck, is it Swan?
Correct.
He had a quote once, the Warriors opened a lot of doors and Xanadu closed them.
Closed them all.
And Deborah Van Valkenburg, outside of Too Close for Comfort with the Ted Knight vehicle, I can't think of her in other things. Fox went on immediately to do The Thing, the John Carpenter thing, and he's great there as Windows. James Remar, I think, and this is where
James Remar is the success. He's the success.
James Remar, exactly, is the one who I believe had the best acting life post-Warriors out of all of them. He pops up in a million things, even big budget things. He'll pop up as a colonel, and he had a run on Sex and the City. I was going to say, Sex and the City was a big deal for him, and he was also in another quintessential NYC flick, Cruising, where he is almost unrecognizable. He plays a gay dancer. You know, he's a beautiful looking human being in everything he's in, but he looks totally, he has almost like his hair is longer. It's more of a bowl. You get an angry energy from him, but it's not even an Ajax angry energy.
I'm going to have to see that.
You have never seen Cruising?
I've never seen Cruising. I reference it.
We're going to do a Cruising episode at some point.
I know.
Because it's just, come on.
And New York, that episode,
Pacino, gay subculture.
I'm going to play the commercial where, who was the captain of the Love Boat?
Meryl Steubing?
No.
Gavin McLeod. Sorry.
Gavin McLeod. Gavin McLeod did a commercial for cruise lines. And his first line was, cruising, I feel, is, and then he would go on to talk about what he thinks cruising is.
Oh, nice.
And whenever cruising would come up, I'm supposed to think of leather and Pacino and all these things. And my mind immediately goes to Gavin McLeod, which is a weird thing.
Cruising to me is amyl nitrate soaked on a hanky in the mouth of my lover. So I don't know if we even want to touch on another race aspect of this. It's very interesting that Cyrus is shot by a white gang member. They blame it on a black gang member, Cleon, because I guess he figured out from the brief moment of Fox's vest from the front that he's a warrior. We'll give him that. And Cleon was wearing the same vest, so he's that. The all-black grammar and Hispanic Gramercy riffs take the white man's word as gospel against the black man. Cleon, who is about to beat up every member of the Rogues by himself, disappears under a sea of elbows.
Yeah.
And then, towards the very end of the film, Masai, the leader of the Riffs, is brought an eyewitness to the assassination of Cyrus, who is another white guy. Presumably, then we know from the ending, they take that white guy's word for who really shot Cyrus. So it's just a really interesting way that the Gramercy riffs work. I don't know what we can learn from that, but
we learned that Walter Hill doesn't see race.
Oh, is that what we learned?
No.
I mean, if we saw a number of white members of the Gramercy riffs, it would make more sense. But they seem pretty Black Power oriented. They seem to have that kind of Black Panther sensibility. It's just curious to me. White eyewitnesses are taken on both sides of the film at their word, and they change their entire, it's a total about face. You know, we got to kill the warriors. We got to kill all the warriors. I want them to, let's go save those warriors. There, you guys.
And you're
good.
Right. It's not just, it's, hey, that little white guy said something and now we have to kill all the warriors. Hey, this little white guy said something else and now we have to kill a different group of guys. Yeah. I kind of feel like, are you friends with Walter Hill? If not, don't ask these questions.
Yeah. Am I tugging at strings again that I should not be tugging at?
You're asking, thanks for coming on and asking unanswerable questions.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's worth pointing out. That's what I'll say about
There
that.
you go.
It's
I'll
worth
take it.
pointing
I'll
out.
take it. As
Yeah.
long as we're on the subject of white people, let's finish up white people. Can we just acknowledge Dean and Jean Ween and their dates as the prom couple at the end?
I was wondering what it was. That's what it is. It's Dean and Jean Ween. That's what
It is
every time
so
I saw them, I'm
funny.
like, why do I know this duo? Why do I know this
I'm of
duo?
course joking. It's not actually them, but I
Right,
think that
right.
every time I see them. I think the juxtaposition works to highlight who the Warriors are. These kids sitting opposite Swan and Mercy are like about to go to college. They're about to start working at their dad's company.
Mhm.
They're about to marry the girls they're with at their prom, probably, and spit out kids and have the normal life.
And less interesting things. They have clean hands and feet. They're wearing clothes they put on that morning.
Yeah. They're wearing a uniform of sorts.
Yeah.
Like the Warriors.
As a kid seeing the movie, I always fought like people like, oh, this scene is so meaningful, and this is the point of this is to foreshadow. And I was always like, oh, just watch the movie. That was my opinion as a young person. Like, why you got to read into everything? They're just those are these people and those are these people.
Mm-hmm.
That scene was moving to me as a kid. Even when she went to fix her hair.
That scene cements the relationship between Swan and Mercy. He's like, no, you look fine. Don't ever let them make you feel less.
Right. No shame.
And then he gives her the corsage.
With his like tough guy. I just don't like to see things go to waste.
Yeah. And this is another reason why I like opening in the daylight in Coney Island. Because at the end of the film, Swan is like, this is what we fought to get back to. Coney Island is different at the end of the film than the beginning. It means something different to him. It's a totally different town. And that's why I like the daylight scene, because it should not start off scary. Coney Island should not look as scary as everywhere else the Warriors have to go. You know, it should be their turf, and they're like, it's great here. And that's why it would hit harder at the end of the film if you open in daylight and it's like there's a journey.
Yeah, because the end of the film, the actual end of the film, it has actual frolicking.
The sand dune.
It has frolicking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're leaving. Swan says, I'm getting out of here. And they're going off together, those two. So it's like they're walking, they're a band apart from the rest of the Warriors in that walk, which is nice. They've already started kind of to be their own gang, him and Mercy, you know, which is sweet.
It's funny because the whole movie was perfectly happy as the small gang got into some trouble and had bop their way back. And the movie would be perfectly happy. And then at the end, Walter Hill goes, and there's something beyond here. Like, and that whole other style of movie. Like, I'm just going to throw that in at the end. What's going on beyond these subways? Like
this small town.
Yeah. Like, what's the movie that ends with like, I think it's like Wanderers or something.
Which was filmed at the same time. They were trying to beat them to the theater with the Warriors.
Oh, really? Because that ends with a pair, I think, driving away from, they're like, let's go to California or something.
Right. They're also walking towards adulthood. They're only going to be wearing those vests for a little while longer, you know? And it's like, it's scary what they're leaving behind, and they're going to lose their brothers in the world of adults, you know? So it's like, it hits on many levels. And you don't have In the City by Joe Walsh and Barry Dvorak, they were close friends, apparently. You don't have that song playing there. I don't know that ending is as powerful, even a quarter as powerful as it is.
No way. Yeah. It's absolutely necessary. It's incredible. It's so perfect. Couldn't be happier.
Yeah. And the lyrics, it's spot on.
Yeah. And Somewhere Out on the Horizon, you know, and I could just see like Walter Hill or somebody like giving them literally that instruction, you know, just think in terms of like, these kids haven't seen much, and like out on the horizon, there's a whole world they haven't seen. And Joe Walsh
out on the horizon, I like that.
That's good. That's good. That'll be the line.
Joe Walsh, by the way, also wrote the best song in Urban Cowboy, All Night Long.
Keep a grinnin' till the weekend comes. Just a pinch between the cheek and gum.
All Night Long. Yeah.
Oh, such a good number. Such a good
song.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to also point out, though, that they go to this conclave to hear from Cyrus what's possible. Cyrus explains what's possible, and half the warriors aren't moved by it. So they're faced with a future that is either Cyrus's future, where they all get together and, I don't know, fill out paperwork and run a huge organization, you know, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
somebody's going to have to PowerPoint this thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so they're faced with that. And I think Swan's like, I got Cyrus's future and my warrior's future, and I'm not happy with either.
Right.
Those are two futures I have no interest in, or now I have no interest in.
Yeah. Cyrus is going to give them a 401k. Like, it's ridiculous. And you know how gangs are. Like, yeah, I'm not going to work with
You know
these
how
other
gangs
guys.
are.
Yeah.
Wait, what did you
somebody
say?
say to your friend, it could work for a little while, but then one gang is going to point to another gang that's getting preferred treatment or a better piece of the action. You can't do anything.
I'd like to see a future, an alternate future where Cyrus isn't shot and he puts his plan into action.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're back in the morning, and Cleon is, Swan, you're war chief. Fox, you're comptroller.
Yeah.
There's 10,000 of us now. You're HR.
Oh, Cochise and Ajax, aldermen.
Right.
You litigate the middle. Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Litigate the middle.
Well, I just want to point out too, as long as we're on Cyrus, you talked about only half of the warriors like what he has to say. In the novel, Cyrus is giving his speech and no one can hear him at the back. So there's a game of telegraph going on, like the Sermon on the Mount in Life of Brian,
mm-hmm.
Word of mouth. So you're maybe not getting exactly what Cyrus means. And I think it works so much better in the movie because talk about an iconic speech in cinema.
Yeah.
And such a great moment. And you can hear a pin drop. And no matter how big the space, if people want to hear someone, all they got to do is shut up.
And when a group of people like that shut
listening.
Up, except for you go, Cyrus.
Yeah, we're with you, bro.
We're with you, bro.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are the two people who had something to say.
It. Yeah.
I think that was intentional too, to say like the crowd can hear him. You can tell because they're responding.
Yeah. I remember the band Pop Will Eat Itself had a hit song, Can You Dig It?
Oh, Can You Dig It? They
had that in their song. Something we talked about in the past that I think bears repeating is just that this would have been such an easy movie to ruin, and they didn't. They didn't go Hollywood. And I think the example that I brought up to you was they could have had Vincent Gardenia reprising his role from Death Wish as the cop out to catch the warriors. Does anyone know where these guys are? And then they cut to the warriors running, and it's just the worst kind of Hollywood shit. And they didn't do any of it.
And it's so easy to picture the studio guys asking for that.
And I think it's because they didn't have any money. They did it on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
It's just such a great idea. It's so beautifully executed. The company was just like, listen, if we make a dime on this, we'll make back our money. And so they left them alone.
A bunch in a different situation, a money situation, there'd be a bunch of white studio execs saying, you're missing whole half of the story. Somewhere is a whole room full of cops trying to figure out how to stop this.
Yeah.
But you called it the taking of the Pelham element. Like, you're missing Mathau. This movie needs Mathau.
Where's your Mathau?
There's a, suspension of disbelief, something we learn about in film school. But suspension of disbelief, in this movie, there's a suspension of dislike because they're in a gang. Maybe we should run a train on you. You seem like you might even like it. It's like, yeah, we're a collection of murderers and rapists.
By the way, in the novel, they do run a train on her.
See?
And then they leave her behind.
It's Isn't
that terrible?
It just shows you that departing from the book is the way to go.
The way to go. And also, Mercy was supposed to be the love interest of Fox. And that's why those two characters are together when Fox dies. But in the filming, she had way better chemistry with Swan. And so they ended up going somewhere great with those characters. But that was a holdover that she was still with Fox for that early
And I do
season.
enjoy her little time with Fox. That's a fun little thing.
Yeah.
And it also lets Fox be a hero just before he goes down.
Right.
He pulls a save yourself.
Yeah. And he got fired from the film, as you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost a blessing that he's out because he's better than everybody. He's better than a lot of people in that
Yeah.
movie.
He's too smart for a gang.
Both in the fantasy of the movie and as an actor in the movie, he's sort of a little too far above everyone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's Juilliard trained.
Like, he's the type of guy I see in a movie, I'm like, when they interview that guy, he's going to have a British accent. You know what I mean? Like,
we talk a little bit about Lynn Thigpen as the linking device that she is, the kind of herald that is telling you about all these adventures. It's a great connective device. But on top of that, it's born of a 70s format. There was first AM radio in the 60s, but then in the 70s, where you could listen to a station and you could hear Queen, followed by Shaka Khan, followed by B.B. King, all these different genres. Today, we think of them as strange bedfellows because people are so splintered. You used to be able to listen for an hour and get turned on to 2 or 3 new artists that weren't in your wheelhouse.
Likely because a human being was making these decisions.
Yeah, an algorithm on 2 legs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, God's greatest algorithm, the human being. Everything about her, spinning reel to reels, the lighting in there, the mouth close-ups, the voice, all hiding the fact that she is such an important mechanism. How do these guys know about these guys? How do these guys know about these guys?
Yeah.
Don't worry. There's an omniscient person.
I hate to keep bringing up the novel, but in the novel, the DJ is important because it's when the DJ plays a Beatles song that all of the gangs know to assemble. That's like the call that brings them all there. The fact that there's a DJ, thank you. If you got nothing else from the novel, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And like to be in the form of such a great actress like Lynn Thigpen, from what I understand, she didn't find out that they were just using her lips until she saw the film.
That sounds like one of those stories.
It does, but Fox was sitting with her, he said.
Oh, yeah.
And she hated it. She was like, what the hell? And then she grew to love it.
It was important. I don't think it would have made sense. What do they call? There's even the voice from above. You're supposed to be faceless.
Disembodied voice.
Disembodied voice. You're supposed to.
Yeah. The word of God.
Yeah. So that was important.
That's a good point.
That she be that. Yeah.
And that's why you need a good actress. You can't be like, just hire me a lip actress. No. You hire a great actress, and then she gives you personality and character and inflection
in this much space.
That much space.
Yeah.
Looking good, Boppers. Like she's just a roller coaster of beautiful syllabic gymnastics in that movie.
Yeah. I like to picture all the weeks leading up to that, just tooling around her house, going like, looking good, all the way up to Coney, all the way up to Coney, all the way down to Coney. Just working through the best inflections because the inflections are so good.
Oh my God, tremendous. Anything else Warriors related that we haven't hit that you want to jump into?
My trivia fact for the Warriors would be when people say, oh, Barry DeVorzon, I don't know who that is. I say, you might be familiar with one of his songs. It's the theme song from the soap opera, The Young and the Restless.
If I knew that, it was so long ago I've forgotten it. That's great.
I believe it goes something like, boom, boom. No, you know what's popping in my head now? There's the theme song from The Incredible Hulk.
I sometimes think, and I'll leave you with this, you're Swan, you're in charge of the Warriors. I sometimes think that I would have just had all the guys hide out all night and then leave in the morning rush with everyone else. Everyone's going to work. It's broad daylight. Trains are all running. There's a million witnesses in the street. A lot of the gangs might be sleeping. 10 a.m.
It was a big night. It was a big night the night before.
They must be exhausted.
It brings up a thing that I do think about while I'm watching the movie. Every time I fault them for one of their decisions, it's like when you say like, oh, if I was robbing a bank, I would never, or if I was going to rob that store, I would never. It's like, you start at the mindset of I'm going to rob stores to make a living. That's a person with bad decision-making skills.
Right.
Don't put a level of logic and intelligence on a bunch of teenage gang members. It's so important that they get to Coney. It's so important that they find their friends. Why are they hanging out with the Lizzies? Because they're teenagers.
Right. Little
And the
break in the
Lizzies
action.
are pretty girls.
Yeah.
It's full of bad decisions because these are young people, and young people make bad decisions.
No, that's true.
And it kind of answers so many of the questions. Like, why did they do this? Because they're young people, and young people make bad decisions.
Right.
And what would I do if I was Swan? Like, probably I'd do a lot worse if I was Swan.
Yeah. You know what? It's true. And it's probably just me watching 27-year-olds playing 15-year-olds making bad decisions. I'm like, come on, buddy, you should know better. But you're absolutely right.
Occasionally someone will say, if I were homeless, I would sleep.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, that first sentence makes everything you say afterwards impossible. Right. You can't know it.
Yeah.
If you call your dad, he can stop it all.
Call your dad.
You can never live like common people.
Wow.
I think that song makes such a good point. Show me what it's like to live like common people. You can't.
The fact that you can even point at common people means that you can never forget it. You weren't born here. You're not an islander.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts on the Warriors. Would you say it is the greatest of all New York movies? I'm talking up against Taxi Driver, Taking a Pelham 123, things like Rosemary's Baby. You know, there's so many great NYC movies. The French Connection, things set here that use New York as a backdrop for real.
You mentioned 4. I've seen 2. Don't get mad.
I know you haven't seen Cruising, so I'm being very judicious.
Escape from New York.
Yeah.
But, you know, within reason. I don't think that there could be a New York movie that could touch me as personally as the Warriors. I think it's a matter of time. I think it's a matter of probably one of the greatest location scouts. But the choices, and I don't mean the amazing 2 sets of stairs in the park. I mean this nook and this cranny.
Yeah.
Just choosing the right amount of filth in some cases. In New York City, you can have a beautiful night always next to filth.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. You know?
Nobody does artful squalor like New York.
Yeah.
Especially at night. There's romantic.
It's a beautiful thing. New York is beautiful in a way. It ain't Paris. And I think it's really well captured. But I also wanted to add that I think it's also like, how old was I when I saw it? And I enjoyed it from like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Could there be a better span of years to enjoy the Warriors? No.
Yeah.
I might even be better that I wasn't from Manhattan or Brooklyn or the Bronx, but I was from just outside.
Right. So you had the romanticism of the exotic.
Yeah. And they could fool me any way they wanted. I certainly wasn't going to say, hey, if they were on 86th Street, how did they end up on that line? Doesn't even connect to that line. You probably did that here and there.
I do that in every film. I'm like, I'll point out to my wife, like, those 2 things aren't anywhere near each other. And she's like, they don't know that in Kansas.
Right.
You know?
As long as you don't turn it off. My dad used to turn off the movie. If someone knocked a guy out and didn't take his gun, my dad would go, that's it.
No.
That's it. We're turning it off.
I'm with your dad. That drives me nuts. My thing is like, and Ajax does, he tosses the bat. Well, my night's over.
Yeah.
I hate that. Jamie Lee Curtis dropping a knife. Anyone who's just like, wow, I made it through. You have never made it through unless you're bouncing grandkids on your knee 40 years from now.
Exactly.
The night is still going on.
Grandpa, can I bounce on your knee? Sure. Let me just put this knife down.
Why don't we leave it there?
Right.
I think, why don't we put our knives away? This was fun. Thanks for joining me, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.